Hello, and welcome to my Complete Survivor tier list. This video will not feature in-depth information on playing each survivor. If you are looking for specific gameplay information, I have separate guides for each character with plenty of info to toss around. The link to the playlist with all the guides is in the description as well as in the top right info icon thingy. I'll cover the survivors by moving through all their skills as a group. Sounds kind of confusing, but all I mean is that I'll talk about everyone's primary ability at the same time, then move on to everyone's secondary, and so on and so forth. As in, give a rating to all primary abilities, all secondaries, etc., but in the context of everyone's abilities being compared at once. How I plan on ranking the survivors is by placing them in numeric order based on which ability performs best to worst and giving points based on their placement. We'll do a final showcase at the end of the video, and whoever has the most points, therefore has the most high tier abilities, will be the best survivor. There are timestamps in the description if you want to see certain skills comparisons or just skip to the end and see the final results. There's a ton of context into how each character plays out in-game, and a very large majority of any given run's success lies in the items you receive and not necessarily the character you choose. The rankings will take this into account. Just know that as of now, on May 21st, 2019, items are the determining factor in most runs, and the later a run goes, the less your character choice matters. Commando is just as good as Engineer when they are both 3 hours into a run, one-shotting everything with 40 sticky bombs and a royal capacitor, okay? So whatever order the survivors are in at the end of the video should not sway you from picking whoever you want. Alright, the ranks are as follows, just first, second, third, and so on. Wow, easy, right? There won't be any SAB letter nonsense, just a numeric order. Some categories may have fewer or more ranks depending on if any skills are tied or in cases such as mul-t having 2 primaries. For simplicity's sake, I'll label each skill by saying a survivor's name followed by the keyboard hotkey used on that ability, as in Artificer M1, Mercenary Shift, etc. Let's begin with the passive abilities. Currently, there are only 2 passives, one on mul-t and the other on Mercenary. Mul-t can hold an additional equipment while Mercenary can double jump. I have to give mul-t second place here because while holding an additional equipment is powerful, especially in the early to mid game, jumping twice adds a ton of mobility and traversal opportunities that literally every other character does not have access to until they either get a ton of movement speed or a Hapu feather. I value mobility over everything in the early stages of a run because chances are you'll probably be killing things pretty quickly with or without equipment or even items if you are efficient enough. And the later a run goes, you'll either be struggling to the point where an extra equipment isn't really going to change anything, or you're killing things fast enough where an extra equipment really doesn't change anything. There's a very small window in the mid game where mul-t's passive really shines. In all other cases, Mercenary takes the win here. So first place to Merc. For primary abilities, Artificer is by herself in 5th place because the simple fact that her M1 is charge based and cannot be spammed. Getting more attack speed simply pumps out the fireballs faster and does nothing for the recovery of each charge, meaning you'll be able to get back to using your other abilities quicker at best. It has good damage and even comes with the DOT, but compared to everyone else's M1, it isn't up to par. Next and 4th, we have the Engineer. There are many aspects that are strong about the Engineer, but his M1 is not really one of them. The ability to store essentially an 800% burst with 8 chances of proccing your on hits is useful, but the curvature of the attack, combined with the staggered release of the balls, means that on smaller targets, and especially anything at a distance, you won't be hitting some of the shots unless you are an MLG Gamer Quickscope G Fuel Pro like me. In 3rd place, Mercenary and Huntress are tied. What keeps them from placing any higher is that the Mercenary is melee, so no range on his attacks, while the Huntress has a hard limit on how often she can attack based on the distance she is from the target. If you're not in these very specific ranges on either survivor, you won't be attacking, so for that, they get 3rd place. Coming in 2nd is the Commando. His M1 feels very comfortable, resembling a typical FPS game's weapon mechanics. It's a great tool for proccing on-hit items because it fires 2 shots with a single activation, taking 0.4 seconds at level 1. However, his M1 and everyone else's pales in comparison to the almighty mul-t. 1st place, obviously. Mul-t's M1 is in a league of its own. Seriously, it is that powerful. And to be clear, I am talking only about his nail gun. The rebar puncher, which a lot of people just call the sniper, is nowhere near as competitive as the minigun of doom. Rebar, if ranked separately, would be down there with the Engineer. Not quite as bad as the Artificer, but kind of close. He doesn't get an extra point for this though. The nail gun, on the other hand, is a god amongst men for proccing on-hit items. Nothing compares. Simple as that. It fires 12 shots per second at level 1. Yes, it has a lower chance of proccing on hit items, 40% to be exact, so by comparison, it may not seem all that good. But when you factor in that increases to attack speed affect the base value of any survivor's attacks per second, the fact that mul-t has a base of 12 puts him far, far beyond everyone else once he gets some attack speed going. 1st place for sure. You know what? Double 1st place. Good job, mul-t, but no extra points for 2 trophies. Sorry, buddy. Coming now to secondary skills, we'll start at the bottom with our favorite boy, Commando. About the only redeeming quality for his M2 is the piercing effect. Other than that, it's a relatively weak single target nuke in every situation that I use it for anyway. It doesn't interrupt your flow of holding on M1 for anything more than a split second once you get some attack speed, so it isn't absolutely terrible to use, just not anywhere close to the other survivors' M2s. There just aren't enough situations where it feels like the M2 is really doing anything special, so last place. In 4th, we have the Engineer. His mines are great for 2 things. Number 1, setting up a defensive perimeter in your bubble shield for your turrets, so things that try to melee them will die, and number 2, dogpiling at point blank range on top of that thick imp overload or any boss really that just spawned. The fact that you can only have 10 placed at a given time means backup mags are literally useless outside of situations where the mines instantly detonate. I really only ever use them in situations described above, and for that he gets 4th. Tied in 3rd place are the Mercenary and mul-t. Their M2s are both pretty good, with each providing a good chunk of damage. Mul-t's does have a stun built in, but tossing it out fully interrupts his nail gun, whereas Mercenary can effortlessly use M2 in a damage rotation, so I'd say they're about equal for that. In 2nd place we have the Artificer. Her M2 really shines in the early to mid game, where taking out groups of foes is the main idea for most characters. It also provides quite a nice boost to single target damage, especially if you get some backup mags. Definitely worthy of being a top tier skill. Finally, the Huntress. Her glaive is crazy good. The bonus damage it gets per chain means that in cases where bosses spawn stacked on top of one another, so pretty much anytime a boss spawns past the 40-minute mark, the damage it pumps out while proccing your on hits back and forth is just oof, absolutely deserving of 1st place. Moving on to the utility skills, sadly, Artificer is down at the bottom by herself again. The utility aspect of her ice wall isn't too great. In fact, I almost always use shifts to simply deal more damage and execute enemies. There aren't really times where the freeze feels impactful, but it still is a good skill to toss into her damage rotation. But as far as utility goes, not very good, so last place. Next, we have a tie between Commando and Engineer. This may surprise some people, but if you've seen my character guide for Engineer, again, links to all my character guides in the description, then you'll know that getting in the habit of relying on your bubble to save you will definitely get you killed the later a run goes. Yes, it is useful. I'm not saying it's a bad skill. Just like the Artificer, there aren't too many situations where the bubble actually helps, aside from maybe blocking a clutch last second greater whiff shot, or maybe a Titan beam or something like that. If anything, just plop it down over your turrets and call it a day. Commando shift just isn't anything special really. It's a roll in the direction you are horizontally moving, not facing, meaning it can't go up or down, just to the sides and forward or backward. This limits his traversal opportunities greatly early on when compared to others, and such he gets 3rd place, tied with the Engineer. In 2nd place we have mul-t. The speed bonus you get from his shift is only half of the value. The rest comes in its huge armor buff. 200 armor equates to 67% damage reduction. That's almost 7 rose bucklers worth of damage mitigation at level 1, which is crazy. Even at level 30, the defense it provides coupled with the speed is a very valuable tool to have. Finally, we have another tie in 1st place position, this time with Huntress and Mercenary. If the Merc shift only provided the dash, it wouldn't even compare to the Huntress, but because it has damage, a stun, and more uses if you hit something, it's too good not to be in 1st. However, the Huntress's shift is in a tier of its own in terms of straight mobility. It is practically an instant teleport in the direction you are facing, and as with any dash in this game, goes further with the more movement speed you have. It is very, very powerful at all points in the game, and absolutely deserving of 1st place here. We have come now to the final section, special abilities. At the bottom here, we have Commando and mul-t. Where else is the robot supposed to go? All his special does is just switches M1 firing style and swap to the other equipment he's holding, both of which I've already addressed and given him points on, so it kind of feels like cheating for him to even get a point here, honestly, but oh well. Commando, on the other hand, actually does something with his R. Yes, he is last place, but only because he stacked up to everyone else. The fact that his R pumps out the same number of shots regardless of your attack speed makes this skill feel extremely underwhelming the later a run goes. It also interrupts your M1 spam, which is Commando's bread and butter, so it really isn't that worth using aside from the stun capabilities. In 3rd place, we have a tie between Huntress and Artificer. If you've been watching my videos for a while, and especially hopped into my live streams, you'll know that Artificer's R isn't too hot. Pun intended, by the way. You are relying on a skill that essentially makes you a sitting duck, and the moment you need to move, like actually move as in sprint, it puts the skill out of range or just straight up cancels it. Again, it is not a bad skill to use. In fact, I throw it into my damage rotations quite frequently. It's just compared to everyone else, not that special. Huntress's R isn't amazing either. It slows the targets and sets them up for things like glaive spams or consistent ukulele or Tesla procs. Other than that, its damage is mediocre, and similar to the mul-t's nail gun, does not proc on hit items nearly as often as the other skills, this time only 20% of the time. It's an alright skill, especially on stationary bosses like Beetle Queens, but isn't too great, so 3rd place along with the Artificer here. Coming in 2nd place is Mercenary. You may be thinking, are you memeing? Tons of hits that do scale with attack speed and invulnerability to hits while inside of it. How is that not the best special in the game? It's good, really good in fact, but you know what else is really good? Getting 3 times the effect of practically all your items. Killing stuff as you're not even paying attention. Being able to just run around like a monkey and still clearing the map in record time. That's right, the Engineer takes 1st place here with his turrets. Like, come on, you really thought he wouldn't be at the top here? His turrets are crazy powerful for all the reasons I described before, but mainly due to him transferring the effect of basically all of his items, aside from the exceptions like Brittle Crown. But who cares about that garbage item anyway? Come on. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you have all been waiting for. Here are the results. But wait, hold on. Before I give you the final standings, I think adding an extra point to whoever has the the highest base HP, damage, and armor respectively is required here because all of your abilities relate to those stats in some way or another. If you're not alive to use any skills, that kind of deters from their usefulness, right? So for HP, mul-t gets an extra point. He has a staggering 200 base health and gets an additional 60 per level. He is a thick boy for sure. For damage, engineer gets a point. He has 2 higher base damage than everyone else except mul-t, who has 11 base damage, so 3 for him, which equates to roughly 17% more base damage. Plus, he gets a few extra points per level as well. Finally, for armor, mercenary gets a point. He has 20 base armor, which is almost 17% damage reduction. Mul-t does have 12 armor, but hey, 12 is less than 20, right? The points I give each character for their rank is simply 1 for last place in any category, and for each rank above last, they get 1 additional point. So if there were 5 spots total and someone got second place, they got 4 points in that category. Again, there were different amounts of rankings per category for reasons such as ties, which is why I opted to do a numeric system. Here are the final results. Tied in fourth, which is last, ooh, spooky foreshadowing, we have the Commando and Artificer with 8 points each. Was anyone surprised? I honestly didn't know what ranking each character would be while I wrote this. I did each category separately and then just went back to tally everything up here at the end. It makes sense to me though. Both Commando and Artificer are slacking in some way or another at the moment. I'll save the details for another video I plan on making regarding changes I'd like to see in the game. In third place, taking the bronze medal, is Engineer. Again, as I've said plenty of times before and really drove home on my character guide for him, Engineer plays differently than everyone else. He's not bad, far from it actually. Objectively, he's the strongest survivor when you consider that items are the focal point of each run, and he essentially gets 3 times their effect. But hey, the numbers don't lie, so third place, buddy, take your seat. In second place is another tie. Huntress and mul-t with 14 points. Huntress is a very consistent survivor to play and brings a lot of valuable tools to the table in her M2 and shift. Nothing else really to say. She's great. Kind of squishy though, but that's okay. Mul-t's M1 is just on a different level again. The rate at which he tosses out hits is faster than the drop off of players in the, oh, sorry. Don't worry, we'll talk about this in the changes Lexi video I mentioned, okay? Okay. And finally, in first place, Mercenary, 16 points. Okay, goodbye, go home, bye-bye. All right. America has the best mobility hands down and is just barely beaten by the Artificer for early game damage. He functions extremely well in the earlier stages, which are arguably the most important factors in determining a run, so it makes sense that he has the most points. And there you go, a tier list for all the characters in the game. Before you go, let me drive home the fact that the rankings of each survivor should not deter you from picking one or the other, simply due to a higher rank. There's a lot of context that goes into each run, and your choice of survivor ultimately doesn't matter too much at the end of the day. If anything, their rank in this list showcases their potential strength as well as their consistency, not their overall strength. All right, that's it for real this time. Let me know what you think, who is the best, who's the worst in the comments below. All the clips shown are taken from my live stream at twitch.tv/Woolie Gaming, so if you're interested, you can follow me there. Also, I am getting back into Path of Exile content, as you may have seen from my newest vid, well, the newest one before this one uploaded, obviously. So if you are looking forward to the new PoE League, especially 4.0 news, consider subscribing to my channel to keep in the loop. Thank you for watching.